Hey, everybody, welcome to another conversation of 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers. The truth of the matter is, I think we're over 50 already. I'm starting 50.2 conversations because I didn't know that I was going to be inundated with so many people wanting to have this conversation. I was about to go out on the road when I wrote my book, The Mosaic. It's a story about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asks the adults where his parents are, they tell him they're in a place called heaven. So he sets out onto the road in search of the place called heaven. And the people that he meets along the way are not the rabbis and the ministers and the priests and the swamis and the gurus and the shamans and the medicine men and women and the Aborigines elders. They're the trash man and the homeless man and the blind woman and the juice man and the waitress and the gardener and the mirror maker and all sorts of assorted people. And he wonders why he's meeting these people until he sits with each one of them and has a conversation, and he just listens to them tell them their stories. And in every single case, Judy, in every single case, what happens is the person he sees is not the person he initially saw. And he realizes the world he sees is not the world that is. It's only the world he sees. And he wonders what would happen if he would see the world without himself getting in the way of it. What would that world look like? And at that moment, he looks over to his left and he sees a monk unzipping the sky. And the monk invites him through into a parallel reality where he meets the wise one who's the keeper of the mosaic. That's all I'm going to say about the book. It's a trailer. If you like what it sounds like, please buy it at Amazon. That would be great. Thank you so much. But what the book told me when I was done is get out on the road and do the same thing Mo did. And so I set a line in the sand date. I dealt with all of my fears. I dealt with all the fact that my body's aching and I didn't see how I was going to do it. I dealt with the fact that I didn't have the means or the resources to go and do that trip. And I said, screw that. March 1st, I'm leaving. And then Mr. COVID came. 2 weeks before I was about to go out, I couldn't go out. Mm-hmm. So I put notes out and said I want to have conversations with people online. Crickets, nothing happened. When I put up the post of 50 conversations with 50 strangers, suddenly I was inundated. So what I want to share with you in just my own foibles of learning how to do this, the words we say are so important. The ideas and the way we present our ideas. Same idea I had, which is I'm here to have conversations with people. Once got crickets. 50 conversations with 50 strangers enticed the imagination of people. And suddenly I was inundated with calls. And now I'm having 50.2, the second version of 50 Conversations with Strangers, because I don't want to ever stop it. It's been so fascinating. Yeah. Short of this becoming my soliloquy, which is not what it's intended to do, I have with you today someone that I've met before, but I don't really know her that well. All I know is that she has always shown me kindness. She has always tried to help me. She has always tried to be there for me. In the few interactions that we've had, she's always shown up with this big, beautiful heart and this desire to just be a friend. It is with honor that I reintroduce myself and introduce you just to a stranger that I really don't know that well, to strangers that I don't know at all. In front of us today, strangers, is J. Winslow. J. Winslow, welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder too. Thank you.
As you can see, all my words.
There is my child growling in the background. No, thank you. That was a great, it's very interesting, very interesting. I haven't read the book in a while, so it was really good for me to be remembered around it. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. So because I don't know you that well, what I always do is I ask people when they come onto the show to just tell us who you are and what's important to you.
Well, that's kind of a trick question in my opinion, because I am still discovering who I am. So I'm not sure I even know.
Okay.
It's funny. This morning I walk every morning with my dog. It's kind of my silent meditation time. And, I'm going to cry. So please excuse me. I'm very smushy today.
Yeah, that's good. There's nothing to be excused for. We love your tears here.
Like your Baba Wawa.
Yeah.
So yesterday, a very, 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 very dear human friend of mine died.
I'm so sorry.
And so this morning, so it's perfect because the reference to the Mosaic is so right on. So this morning, what I was reflecting on is that last year at this time, yesterday, as a matter of fact, I had landed in John Wayne Airport, where I had never been before, on my way to help produce an event that was super exciting, thrilling. I was so honored to be a part of it. I was meeting some icons for the first time. It is called the World's Greatest Motivator Program, which you may want to look up. But that was a year ago. A year ago, I was in this place of excitement and joy and like culmination and realization and participation. It's just, and here I am today, just like mourning my friend. Yeah. And then I realized that over 40 years ago, on the same day, I was getting ready to get married.
Wow.
Because I got married. My anniversary is next week from someone who I haven't been married to, Mr. Winslow, as a matter of fact. And I was 20 years old. Wow. And then I started, and that was just like, wow. Like, so I was in a completely other space. And that threw me back even further because when I was a teenager, same day, in my teenage years, I was suicidal. And I knew that my next week was my birthday, and it was like not a cause for celebration at all. Yeah. It was this very sad, lonely time. And so I just was having all of this come rushing in. Wow. So how perfect that the Mosaic and you sharing that is that sort of a mirror. Like if we think about who we have become and are becoming along this path, it's such a freaking crazy ride. And that's why when you say, who are you? It's like, I don't know who I am. I know what I want to be and become, you know, and that is even radically unclear because I want to be the best version of myself. Well, who's that? Yeah. You know, and I know that I value kindness and generosity and humor and so many things that you, sir, embody. And I think that's why we connected, you know, when we first spoke. But, you know, I know those things guide me, and they did then. But they were so ethereal when I was a kid and I was suicidal. Like there felt like there was no kindness. There was only just meanness and abuse and berating people if they were vulnerable, right? And then, you know, I think of all these iterations, and then I think about my friend who died, and she was just this amazing light and this gatherer of humans, kind of like you are. And I met her on Fire Island, and it was this very random, like she should never have been in my life. And yet she was such an important part of my journey. It's just, it's so fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is fascinating. And it's part of the reason why I love doing this show, because strangers are only strangers until we take the time to make them friends. And when so many people that I've bumped into in my life that you would think had no reason to be in my life showed up and had incredible reason, and doesn't mean that I speak to them much. Right. Look at the connection you and I have had, and we've maybe had a couple conversations, right?
Yeah.
And those were some years ago. So I just want to tell you how much I love you and adore you for the vulnerability and honesty, and for coming into this room and being so real and being so vulnerable and being so yourself.
I wish I knew how to be another way.
Yeah.
But
I don't. I actually am so happy you don't know how to be another way.
I am not a good faker. Anyway, so that's me.
Fabulous. So What makes you
Yeah.
happy?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, that was another thing because yesterday I was just destroyed. Like I knew this was coming. She's been quite ill, and yet yesterday, all of our buddies, like my Fire Island family, as I call them, my chosen family, we were devastated. And I had to go. I went to the beach. Thankfully, I live by the beach, and I went to the beach and cried. And she was so happy. And this morning, I woke up, and at first, I was sad, and then I thought, you know, Susan would only want me to be happy. That's what she embodied.
Yeah.
Like even through her illnesses, she was so set on being happy and doing and being and showing up. And for me, I find like the smallest things make me happy. Like just hanging with my dog makes me happy, and puttering in my house. And I just bought a camper, and dreaming of like where I'm going to go and what that's going to be like. And like, I'm such a goofball. Pretty much, I'm pretty happy. I'm a pretty happy little goofball. And yet I can be plunged. And I think also because as someone who lived with so much darkness inside of me when I was a kid,
Yeah.
God bless personal development, because when I was 28 years old and that light switch was flipped on, I have never been the same, thankfully. And even in my darkest moments, I can pull myself back from that brink and find something. I laugh at myself like a crazy old lady. I think I'm really funny. Or I think the universe is really funny and just shows me this funny stuff. But yeah, I'm more happy than I'm not, and I'm so grateful for that, because that's such an inside job.
Yeah, totally. You said something that would be so easy to gloss over, but I want to circle back to it for a moment. And that was that moment where that light switch turned on inside you. Tell me about that moment, if you would.
So I have a little bit of a story around it. What a
Please.
surprise. So I went to this course, which literally changed my life in 2 weekends, which I know is insane, and yet it happened. So here's my little story about it. So during the thing, um, there were all these different processes and conversations and digging up and unraveling. Okay, whatever. At the end, I'm in New York City in a room with 350 people, from literally like guys who are garbage men to guys who are CEOs of major corporations. Like it was this very wide swath of
Mm-hmm.
humanity, which was really cool. And it was very cool to be in a room with other people who were interested in making their life better. I just found that fascinating. And I met some people who became lifelong friends. So I'm sitting next to them. Now we've bonded and we're sitting together. And at the end, they say, so if you didn't get it, like we don't want you to leave here without it. So if you didn't get it, you should stand up, and we're going to go around the room and make sure that, you know, we resolve that for you.
Wow.
So I stand up, and my friends are like trying to pull me back down into my seat. They're like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I don't think I got it. You know, I think I need a little to get there. And so luckily they started on the other side of the room. So maybe there's 25 people out of the 350 standing up, maybe less. So the first person goes, I can't imagine even what they said. And they started sharing, and they started helping them with it, or processing, or whatever you want to call it. And I sat down because now I get it. So then
Oh.
the next person says whatever their shtick is. And I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. And I stand up because I'm like, I don't get it. So I'm standing up, I'm sitting down. I'm the only schmo in the room doing this, of course. Standing up, sitting down. And my friends are like, what is wrong with you? And okay, so you've only known me for 4 days, and I'm a little bit, you know, whatever. But I wanted, you know, to get my arms around this. And all of a sudden I sit down and I have like this major epiphany. And the epiphany is, so I told you I was suicidal, and I came into this room very dark, very like, I've got to get my arms around this or I'm checking out. I didn't have
Yeah.
the nerve to check out. It's the only reason I was still around. I didn't have the chutzpah to off myself. I was praying for a car accident. Anyway, all of a sudden I got this ding, that 2x4 over the head.
Yeah.
And I realized that in life, just like I was doing, you cannot stand up and sit down at the same time. Meaning, I could not be happy and sad at the same time. choose.
Wow.
And so I got that I was choosing, even though I would defend myself to the nth degree, that on some level I was choosing to be depressed. And I now had a new choice. I could either stand up or sit down. And
Wow.
I was going to, and so for me, I was choosing happy. And literally, like, stuff had happened through that whole experience. But in that moment, it was like, oh, I got it. Like, we all have all these options. It's not black or white, stand up, sit down, happy, sad. It's like there's all these elements, these degrees of gray, these colors, but you choose.
I love that.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, for people who are listening, I just want to slow it down for a second and just ask you to replay what I know it was Judy Winslow, Jay Winslow just said.
Whatever.
Just replay what Jay just said. And just ask yourself, take a pause and ask yourself what choices you're making. Those choices may make up your life and may determine the life that you live. And if you make another choice, like Jay's suggesting here, or Jay's storytelling us about, that choice has the potential to change the whole trajectory of the rest of your life.
It does. And even when you think you're not choosing, you're choosing.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah. So we have to take a responsibility because we're the only ones. It's all us all the time.
So even if our conversation were to end now, you would have everything that I would want you to have from this conversation. And I have everything that I want, but it's not. We're still going to keep going. So how about that? Let's jump into what I call the lightning round, which, by the way, I suck at. I'm not good at a lightning round, but it gives me sort of this context. Okay. Are you a dog or a cat person?
Dog.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Those two I get pretty good. Now's when I start to suck. Okay.
Okay, can't wait.
Would you consider yourself to be someone who's in the box or someone who's out of the box?
Yes.
Okay. You know that only someone out of the box would answer yes to that question. So, what does yes mean?
It's not in, sometimes I'm in and sometimes I'm out, and sometimes I wish I was in when I was out, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Right?
Okay. I love it. I know both of these are really important, but what I want to know for you right now is which one is more important for you in these days, okay? Is it more important for you to speak and say what's on your mind, say your message and be able to broadcast your message out to the world? Or is it more important for you to hold the space for other people to say their messages and listen to them? What's more important?
Wow, that's a good one, mister. Yeah, I love, love, love holding space and listening, but I also feel that for so many, I've spent a lot of my life, and I still do actually, really struggling with visibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I need to dabble a bit more in the sharing my message than I presently do. I think my go-to is to give the space to someone else.
Yeah. So, having lobbed that over the net, now that you have the space to say what you want to say, what would you like to say?
I'm so energetically pulled by all that happened yesterday, and my friends, and we're just in this constant conversation. Yes. There's messages coming in while we're talking.
Yes.
I will say that my biggest driver, and I've known this for a very long time and not really know, you and I think spoke about this, but my biggest driver is around making a difference. I think from a day-to-day, moment-to-moment life business trajectory space that doesn't have a clear path or that's not a singular message. Making a difference takes many forms. But I do know that for myself and what I seek to imbue and hold space for others is this capacity to make a difference, to know that we are all here to do so. I believe that we are all unforgettable and that we all come in with particular gifts, and that it really is our responsibility to own those when most of our life is spent either shirking, rebelling, or refusing those gifts. And I wonder what will happen for each of us. And I so enjoy this journey of, if we lean into those places that we don't like about ourselves, that we don't feel our gifts, but other people see they are, or whatever, like, what is that? What are you actually here to do, to contribute, to be? I find that so fascinating and interesting. And it's not just myself that's here to make a difference. I believe all of us are. And I think in these particular times when we are so divided and there's so much divisiveness, that if we took the breath and the time to come from that space rather than from this place of dividing, we, as you have said over and over, we have more that connects us than divides us. Yeah. So wouldn't it be interesting, and isn't it interesting? I find it is. And one of the reasons we enjoy the communities we do is because we do these deep dives, is I would much rather investigate that about someone than to know, I don't care what you had for breakfast or what you're wearing or boxers or briefs, like that's all, right? Dog or cat. It right. Tells us stuff. But I really enjoy when people are willing to share from their heart.
Yeah.
And that is where we make a difference, even in the times when we don't think we're making a difference.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Do you feel you have fit into the world, or have you always felt you're different?
No, I'm a weirdo. And now I'm an old weirdo, which makes me even weirder. And I don't know how it happened. Like, where did the last 35, 40 years go? Like, what the hell?
Where did they go?
No, I've always been a weirdo. And that's actually, that's a big part of my personal story is that was so torturous when I was younger. And I remember literally the moment, and I can put myself there in a second, when I was sitting in a boardroom. I just wrote a chapter. I just put a chapter in a book about this. And I literally remember the moment of thinking, really, universe? Like, this is why I was such a misfit. I was actually put here, again, this is about what's your gift. I was put here to help businesses understand the value of not fitting in, and of the people who run those businesses, why showing up as their real self is of value to the organization. Like, you had to put me through suicide and darkness and crying and no friends and not being picked on the team to be anything, and like just being such a wacko, weirdo, just misunderstood, shy. And yet here I am expressing, like, I think that's what the universe does. We are downloaded into, like, even no matter your path, right? You end up in this, here I am in this chair going, wow, these people want to know what I have to share. And what I have to share is on this platform, this bedrock of all that misery. Yeah. Like, how crazy is that? That's crazy.
Well, I worked at Hay House for a long time as director of business development. And one of the things that I found, and I can't say this publicly in the way that it's going to sound, but most of the people who were there did not write the book that they knew. They wrote the book they most needed to read. And for me, it's 100% true that the Mosaic is not the book that I knew. It's the book that I most need to read. And so oftentimes the story that we tell in the broadcast or the book that we write or the speech that we give or the reason why we're called into boardrooms is because we are telling the story we most need to hear into the mirror. When I was about to set out on my trip, a woman said to me the guidance I would give you, because I asked her advice because she had done one before. And she said, you'll be fine if you realize that every person you meet is going to be you speaking to you about you. And I went, whoa. I mean, that's like what a beautiful way to see this journey. So that when I sit with the Ku Klux Klan, I'm not listening to them speak of their hatred. I'm listening to me speak of my hatred, of my own hatred.
Mm.
And putting those pieces together in places, digging deep inside myself to find those places that I've hidden somewhere so down deep that I don't even look at. You see, I suck at lightning round. So, would you say you operate from your head more or your heart more?
I'm definitely a head person. Like there's a lot of people up there talking all the time. Um, so there's a lot, it's very busy up there. However, I think ultimately I'm a heart person because
Yeah.
I am totally lit. Like where I am now, what I do, where I live, like none of that makes any sense. That's all heart.
Yeah. I love asking that question because it shows me how often I misperceive somebody according to their perceptions of themselves. Because I would say you're all heart, um, and so it's beautiful to hear how many characters are living in
Thanks.
the landscape of your mind. Would you say you're a leader or a follower?
Mm. You know, it's funny. I never thought of myself as a leader. And I guess it was about in 04, 05, I applied. Sorry.
That's no, don't. There's no reason to be sorry. This is a room where
I told you I
okay.
must smush. So I wanted to do this thing here in town. It's called Leadership. A lot of chambers run it, right? It's called Leadership Sarasota. In this case, it's Leadership Chicago, Leadership wherever. And it's run through chambers. And on the application, one of the questions was, how long have you been a leader? And I thought, well, what?
Mm.
It's not, huh? So I really had to sit with that because I literally had no idea what they were talking about. And I started to think about that, like, I'm a leader? And I realized that, you know, I guess I am. You know, I started to have all these memories of all the way back to, I remember when I was in high school and I was part of this, can't believe it now, but I was part of this sorority. And somehow I became the leader of all the little baby newbies. Like, how did that even happen? Like, I
Right.
would not have, this is in the depths of my depression. And
Mm.
yet I had this other alternate personality of, it's just, so I started to think about this track. And I guess in some ways I am a leader. You know, I started TEDx Sarasota. I've started multiple businesses. Blah, 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 blah. So there is this sort of textbooky space of, am I a leader? I guess. Um, uh, on another wavelength, I'm not. I'm, you know, like I'm doing this camper. I have no idea what I'm doing. To think that I don't know what I was thinking. As usual, it was totally hard. It was like, oh, we'll get a camper. We'll go to Burning Man. Yay. Go around the world. Yippee. But now that I have it, I don't know. I don't know how to turn things on. I don't know how to do the water. I don't know how to.
Right. Right.
Thank God I have a neighbor. And I'm like, hi, can you explain? I've watched all the videos, spent 3 days watching videos. I still don't know how to do this. So, you know, I think there's times that even, and I have friends who are like, wow, you're so awesome. You're of whatever age, which like, and now you're doing this and you're doing that. And, you know, so I guess it's a perspective thing, right? So
Yeah.
some will see us as a leader and others will see us as a follower. I don't know how I see myself. Becoming, I'm still in the becoming.
Okay. I normally follow it up with a question, and I'll just follow it up the same way that I do there. Leadership is really under analysis right now. Because if you look in just about any segment of our society, our leaders in our church are being brought to cause. Leaders in our businesses are being brought in front of a
Yeah.
camera. Leaders in politics are certainly being brought in front of, accountability. Leaders in self-help, leaders in spirituality, all our leadership places are being questioned. The lowest hanging, easiest fruit to go to, just to make a point, is leadership in politics. And I don't really want to know what side of the fence you're on. What I want to know is if you agree with this idea that we elect people to be our leaders, and we assume that they will become they will lead us.
Mm.
And yet what seems like it happens now, maybe more than ever, but maybe we're just more aware of it now than ever, is that we lead within our silos. Like if you're a pro-Trumper, the people that are pro-Trumpers don't stand up to him and say, these are beautiful. Like there's some amazing things you've done, which are great, but there's some really lousy things that you've done. And we can't allow that to happen. We have to really question some of those things and bring them to the light. If you're on the anti-Trump camp, it's the same thing. They don't give the dog a bone. They can't think of one good. I had someone in the room here say, "Well, just tell me one good thing he's done, right?" And so, and I could tell, like, I'm not a pro-Trump person, but I could list 3 or 4 or 5 things that he's done that were good. What it seems like we have a dearth of
Mm.
is leaders that are able to stand up to the momentum of their own silo and say, I agree with like this is the way I would like to see this, but these things really have to change within our silo. I see that
Okay.
even in the self-help movement, okay, even in the organization that we got to know each other through. There's some things that they do great, some things that they don't do great. Nobody
Sure.
stands up to say. And then I realized in another conversation with a stranger in this room that I myself am guilty of the same thing within my own life. That when I look at the man that I've become, I'm pretty happy with the person that I am right now. I feel very comfortable with the man that I've become. But there's some things that I do that I would never imagine that I would do. And that the momentum of those things that I do are so strong that I don't have the courage to stand up to that and go and change that. And so
Mm.
if I don't have the courage within my own life to be a leader in my own life, to change those things that are not in my own best interest, and that's just my own life. I'm the ruler of my life. I should be able to make those changes. How can I expect people that I elect into office who I'm sympathetic with to do the same
Yeah.
thing? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as you're speaking, what is showing up for me is 2 words. One is integrity, and the other is alignment. And I think you know that I work with mostly CEOs and founders of small businesses, which I greatly enjoy because unlike large businesses that get very unwieldy and have very many layers of stuff to peel through and dig through, it's a much sort of simpler organism. And I speak about, we have a lot of conversations around both of these topics and how they pertain to their leadership, their choices, their leadership style, how they design the path forward, all of those things. And I hear you in that, yes, it's a struggle. It can be a struggle. There's some things that are easy to stay in integrity with. And I imagine that's the same for whoever we elect. Where I get kind of thrown around is when people start behaving out of that space. So for instance, I'm in Florida, and we have some very interesting officials, elected officials here, who are saying things that are just like not true. Like we know they're not true. When you suppress data, for instance, as our government is doing, that would sort of indicate that something is amiss, because we don't normally suppress anything when there's nothing to hide. So that would indicate lack of integrity. So if we just try to line up with our own integrity on a daily basis. Now, I have some integrity issues, for instance, around food. I love potato chips, and I don't seem to be willing to give those up for pretty much anything, even though that is not in integrity with my goals and aligning with the right. But that isn't impacting anyone else at this time. It's really only impacting me. When we look at the level of integrity within an organization, I don't think it's an outlandish ask for them to stay, one, in integrity, and two, in alignment. That's just not a big ask. And that's what I believe leadership should be up to, regardless of the organization.
Love it. Do you think people are more similar than they are different, or more different than they are similar?
Wow. That's a great question. I feel that you are probably more versed in speaking to that. I haven't, there's a lot of humans in the world, and I've not met very many of them, statistically speaking.
Right.
So I don't know. I do feel like when we really drill down into who people be, there are a lot of similarities, but I don't know if it's because if I grew up as somebody and had a life experience as someone who was popular and blended and involved, that's not who I am. I've been a witness. I've stood on the edge. I'm a back row girl at the conferences. I want to see what everyone else is doing. I'm an observer. Like, that's just who I be. So is everyone else like that? No. But do we have the same interests? Yes, I think we all want to be loved and cherished and respected and seen. I think we all want to be seen.
Beautiful answer. Do you believe that, because you're a great listener, do you believe that the world around us is speaking to us? Do you believe our bodies are speaking to us? Do you believe our workplaces speak to us? Do you believe that our environment is speaking to us?
I do. This might be a strange answer. Yes, and I don't know that we all speak the same language, and all of those entities. So I don't, am I, it's like if you said to somebody, "How are you?" and they say, "I'm fine," and then you get to interpret that, right? So if all of those entities are saying, "I'm fine," or "I'm not," or we're drowning, or we're parched, or we're filled with debris, it's loud and clear. But we then, again, we're choosing, right? So do we hear, do we not hear? What are we hearing? I have a sibling who we just don't seem to be on the same planet about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I often wonder, we speak very infrequently. It's always very difficult. And afterwards, I always think like we're not in the same conversation. Yeah. So does that happen with I wonder, does that happen with ourselves? Like, we're not in the same conversation.
Love it. I don't know if you know this or not, but I have the blessing of having a 30-year-old developmentally delayed daughter. And can I share a story with you about her?
Please.
My daughter doesn't have the ability to speak in conversation like this. When she speaks, most people don't understand what she's saying. Mm-hmm. Over the last couple of years, she's gotten a little bit better, so a few people more understand. But for a long time, I was about the only person who understood her. And I don't even know how I understood her. I just understood her because we were so close. We just understood each other. But Judy, there were so many times when she would speak and I didn't understand her. And when I didn't understand her, what she would do is she would raise her voice and say it louder, thinking that maybe I just didn't hear her. And as I get older, she was probably right because my hearing's starting to go a little bit less, but it was never really because I didn't hear her. It was because I just couldn't make out what she was saying. To her credit, when she raised her voice, sometimes she's pronounced something a little bit differently, and I
Mm.
caught something that I didn't catch before, but not very often. And so she would raise her voice and I still didn't hear her. Then what she would do is she would throw a tantrum. But that tantrum wasn't necessarily the moment after she raised her voice. Sometimes it could have been hours later
Right.
because she still had this desire to be heard that I didn't, and I wasn't hearing her. So it
Yeah.
could be while we were at the beach. It could be while we were in a restaurant. It could be while we were at a friend's house. It could be when I took her out to an appointment that I had because I just wanted her to see the life that I had. It could be at our dining room table. It could be in a restaurant. It could be anywhere where she would have a tantrum that would be out of control.
Mm.
And when I still didn't understand the tantrum, which I normally never did, then she would get so frustrated she would run and she would try and grab my shirt and rip my shirt or bite me. And this happened for a long time. I like to think that I'm a pretty sensitive, intelligent man, but none of my sensitivity or my intelligence did one bit of good in this situation. Because
Right.
for about 15 years this went on, and sometimes it happened 3, 4, 5, 10 times a day. Thank
Mm.
God it didn't happen every day. At one point, I just could do no more. And I looked at her in the midst of her rage and I said, Elisa, you have to know how much I love you. And I do, and I know you know how much I love you. And you also know how important it is for me to understand you. I just can't understand your words. Would you please do me the favor to try and tell me what you're saying without speaking to me? Do you find another way to do it without
Mm.
words? And in the midst of her rage, she broke into a smile that just melted my soul. And I said, well, what's that? What's going on? And she said, I am daddy. And I said, hold it. You are daddy. What does that mean? How are you doing that? And she took her finger and she put it to the side of her head. And what I understood was because she couldn't speak clearly, she was able to put thoughts into my head that I could get. And I was hearing those thoughts, but I didn't even
Right.
trust that they were real because I didn't know that she could think that. When people can't speak, we sometimes think they can't think. And so I didn't know what she was capable of thinking, but she was
Mm.
putting thoughts into my head. And I said to her, are you little
Wow.
sucker? Have you been putting thoughts into my head this whole time? And what she did is when I got that, all of the tension, all of the weight of having to try to communicate with me fell off her shoulders and she just was free and was laughing. This
Mm.
contagious laugh that caught me in its contagion. And we laughed for probably 10 or 15 minutes nonstop with her stopping and laughing. And then I was laughing so hard. She started laughing from me laughing and me stopping, vice versa.
That's sweet.
What I realized is that she had a way of communicating to me that I didn't see. And as soon as I knew that, as soon as I felt that, from that point on, she's never yelled, she's never tantrumed, and she's never screamed, attacked me again. So I thought, how fabulous. But I wonder if what she taught me could go into boardrooms, could go into schools, could go into hospitals, could go into homeless shelters, could go into prisons, could go into CEOs, offices, to go into entrepreneurs. And I started to take her methodology of speak, yell, tantrum, attack
Mm.
into places that I would work with.
Mm.
And what I found, Jay, is that in every single case, in every single situation, people do exactly the same thing. When they speak and they don't get heard, they yell. When they yell and they don't get heard, they tantrum. And when they tantrum and they don't get heard, they try and destroy. That could be a relationship, it could be a marriage, it could be a family,
That's
it could be the
true. Yeah.
reputation, they could blow up a building, they could shoot people in a square. And the
Yeah.
the solution to it is finding a way to hear what a person's saying without trying to fix or change them, but just to listen to what they're saying. And that's in large part why I'm doing these 50 conversations.
Yes. And
Tell me
what you
your
just
thoughts.
said, it's to listen to them, but it's to listen to what they're saying, but it's also to listen to what they're not saying.
Yes.
Because just like her frustration, which we all have, and certainly when we get into situations like I described with my brother, we forsake, we want to be heard. So there's this weird, like, I'm thinking of it as like a value ladder. So there's this part of us that wants to be valued. There's a part of us that wants to contribute. But there's also this part of us that wants to listen and support. Like it's a dance. It's a dance. And sometimes we figure the dance out and sometimes we don't. When you were sharing that, I was thinking about my dad. My dad and I were also very, very close. It's a beautiful gift, isn't it? Yeah. And so my dad, for about the last 5-6 years of his life, he couldn't speak. And he had Parkinson's. So his vocal abilities were really compromised. And we used to hang out. So he couldn't be on the phone with me at all. And they don't live near me, so I would schlep over to go see them. And I would just sit with him. And we would just hold hands like we used to when I was really little.
Yeah.
And he would squeeze my hand and we would just talk with our eyes. We didn't really say much.
Yes.
And we would sit that way for hours.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful, but it was also so heartbreaking, kind of like what you were describing. But unfortunately, that, didn't get better. It got worse. But it was so, like, there was this strange level of comfort just knowing that we still had this little, like, secret dialogue.
Yeah.
And I know he didn't have that with anyone else. So it made it really, really precious.
So special.
So, yeah, I think, there are times when we're able to access that, if you will. And then there's other situations where we can't. Certainly my ability to relate to the current administration and many of the these quote leaders, because I don't consider them leaders. I consider them self-aggrandizing creeps who are out for their own good, not the common good. That is the antithesis of making a difference, folks. Hello. They're really about bettering themselves. So it's very hard to reconcile all of that, but I do think it's possible. And one of the reasons I love working with the leaders that I do, I love my clients so much, is because they operate from a place of that is their ultimate desire. They're not just about making money. They're about making a difference. They're not just about creating widgets. They're about helping people find meaning as well and contribute and live their best life as we all, lift as you climb. We all should rise together. And that's the world I want to be a part of.
Love it. When you look at the world we're living in, what do you think it's saying to you personally?
I'm really distressed by the world we're living in. And I keep saying, God, I'm glad I'm older. Like, I never thought I would be this person, but like, the world's really wackadelic, man. And I just don't even know how to be in it right now. And I find myself I live in a beautiful little bubble that I love. I love the people that are in it. I love going to my little beach where it's safe and quiet and peaceful. And I love my little nature walks. And I guard my little universe very heavily. I have a artillery ready for that battle. But I don't know. I really am very confused because one of the things I'm really missing, you and I are part of some communities that are very much about positivity and awakening and learning and bettering and betterment. It's one of the reasons why I love Burning Man. It's a place of love and creation and possibility. And the biggest missing for me right now is not to be able to be surrounded and immersed in that kind of community space. I miss that so much. And I'm not a good TV news person because to me, it's all propaganda. It's all what they want us to see.
Yep.
It's very divisive. There's a lot of darkness, and I do everything I can to stay away from it. So I have a very slanted vision and view of the world. I admit that, and I do my best to keep it as Pollyanna perfect as I can, man. So
Yes.
I don't know if I'm a good person to ask that question.
No, you're perfect. It's always good to hear. If you had 1 minute, Jay, and you've already said so much, but if you had 1 minute to speak to a world that was listening to you right now, that was open to your message, that wanted to hear what you had to say, what would you say?
I would say, these are all like bumper stickers. Love wins. Be the difference you would like to see and be. And yeah, like be your best self because we need you. We need your best self. And anything less than that, it's just not okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me. If people are as intoxicated with you as I am, and they want to get there, they have companies, small companies, and they want to work with you, I want you to send me all your website and social media links and a headshot. But where would they find you now?
Well, the easiest place right now is probably at my site, which is unforgettablebrands.com.
Okay. I want you to go to Unforgettable Brands right when you're, even while you're listening now, and check it out. Judy, thank you so much for coming. To those people who listen all the time, if you've enjoyed this conversation, um, it's my joy that you're here with us. And if you think someone of your friends would enjoy it too, please share it with your friends. If you don't think they enjoy it, don't share it with anybody. It's fine. This is only an avenue for us to have the things that we want to have. If you don't want to have it, then you don't have to do anything with it. What I love about every time I come into this room is that something magical happens for me. The heart that I feel in another human being that I haven't felt. Sometimes I didn't even know the person existed 18 seconds before we came into the room. With Jay, I knew that she existed, but I haven't talked to her in probably a couple of years now.
In a couple of years, yeah.
And to be able to have this kind of conversation with someone I really don't know that well is such an honor and a blessing. And what I'd like to invite each of you to do, open up the space in your life to have conversations with people. Open up the space in your life to even more than conversations, to just listen to people, to be there to hear them. Go up to someone you don't know, either in real life or in virtually, and say, I would love to have a conversation with you. Would you be willing to do it? And take a little while out of your life to just see what happens. We live in a world full of strangers until, as Jay said, we make the choice to make strangers friends. The way we make strangers friends is by listening to them. Just taking the time to say to them, we value what you say, we honor what you say. Every single person that I know wants three things. They want to be loved and accepted. They want to be listened to and heard. They want to be acknowledged and validated for what they believe. No one in my 65 years of being on this planet has ever said to me, Danny, you have to believe like me. It's not that important that we believe like each other. When they feel loved and accepted, when people feel understood and heard, when people feel validated and acknowledged, they don't care what you believe. They just love you for the fact that you give that gift to them. Some of my best friends have the wackiest belief systems you could ever imagine. I don't believe what they believe, but they're my best friends and I take a bullet for them. So reach out beyond your silo.
Yeah.
See what people are saying, because the longer we think like the people that think like us, the more we will see exactly what we've always seen. Innovation comes when we have the courage to walk outside of our silo, to meet with people of unlike mind, to listen to what they have to say, and to see if there's something in what they're saying that would help us to see the world differently. To me, that's innovation. Judy, is there one more thing you want to say before we go?
Mm. First of all, thank you. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you. I really enjoy it. I guess what I would like to say is I would just encourage everyone listening to be true to you, be curious about all you encounter, human and otherwise, and really be committed to enjoying this ride, because it's crazy fast, and it's just not worth that other point of view. And believe me, I tried both. This is way better.
Thank you again for all you share. Thank you again for who you are. Thank you again for not being a stranger in my life. To those of you listening, thank you again for listening. Until we encounter our next stranger, I wish you a beautiful moments, and stranger things have happened than people listening to people that they've never met before, falling in love with them, being intoxicated with the work that they do, and asking their help in the work that you do to build a stronger work together. Don't be strangers. Until later. Ciao.